Good day everyone, and welcome back to the channel today. Today we're going to be talking about Thac0, or Thac0, or Thac0 as it's also known by some people. So what was Thac0? Now Thac0 is one of those things that you either love or you hate. It required negative maths, which is always a bit of a head scratcher, and although there were charts, which I've put on the screen here, to help you, a lot of people didn't like it, but some people do, so I thought I would talk about it. Now, Thac0 was the system that I was basically introduced to when I was much younger, so I'm more familiar with it than maybe later editions. Now, saying all that, I'm a big fan of 3.5, which went away from Thac0 as you could possibly can. However, I've seen some cases where people want to bring Thac0 back, or some type of a system like Thac0 back, for their games, and I wanted to talk about that. Dungeons and Dragons originally used a descending armor class scale, where lower armor class meant that the character was harder to hit, so a -3 armor was quite difficult to hit. I think you went up to -5 at some point. I think there was magic items up to -5 anyway. Each player character and monster had this stat called Thac0 or Thac0, and your hits were calculated against this armor class. In practice, most opponents don't have armor class of 0. The target's armor class is subtracted from the attacker's Thac0 when determining a hit. For example, a character with Thac0 14 must roll between 14 and 20 to hit an opponent with AC 0. This is where the head scratchy maths comes into. Against an opponent with armor class 6, he rolls between 8 and 20, so 14 minus 6 equals 8, if you understand. In the original rulebook, Men and Magic 1974, a chart was provided to determine the roll you needed to hit. Now, I wasn't familiar with this setting, but it is a good idea to include where it originally started from and why it went away. In 2020, Jeff Grubb described Thac0 as an invention of the convention tournament scene, so it was basically made for tournament gaming or big games where it would be basically like a huge event, and it was a way of allowing fair play in such massive events. On a tabletop game, maybe it's not needed so much, but for large-scale events, maybe it does have some merit. In 2017, a former employee, Tim Thac, originally created it as an in-house design tool, so it wasn't to be used in desktop gaming or tabletop gaming. It was more something to help developers create a fairer system and to average hit chances. Thac0 eventually came out into published books, though Cass could not recall which writer originally invented it or who first used it. Originally, it was used in the Dungeon Master's Guide 1st edition, 79, between pages 197 and 215, Appendix E. In 2nd edition, it replaced the hit charts with a method to determine a hit. This was described in the Player's Handbook in 2nd edition in 1989 and the Player's Handbook 2nd edition revised 1995, page 119. It was also included as an option for the Rules Encyclopedia in 91, where it was recommended for experienced players who don't have trouble juggling numbers. As an alternative, it's to pre-calculate the record and attack rolls as necessary for armor classes from 9 to -5. As I mentioned, -5 earlier. Dungeons and Dragons got rid of it in 2000, and it changed to a more initiative ascending armor class system where higher armor class is better. Characters now have attack bonuses, which is added to the D20, and compare it to the target's armor class to determine a hit. This change eliminated Thac0 from all editions and future editions from the game. So, what do I think of Thac0? Well, as I said, I started with this system, so I'm probably a lot more familiar with it than later systems. However, I understand that it's very head mathsy and if you're playing something for fun, you might not want to basically have to do that kind of negative maths in your head. But there were charts and things, like early editions of Warhammer 40,000 and Warhammer Fantasy Battle. There was charts put in the books so you could understand what to hit and what not to hit. As things have gone on, systems have become more streamlined and much more easier to play and flow a lot better. However, I am still in the camp where I think sometimes mechanics can bog down games severely. I remember quite accurately or quite clearly that there was an L5R game that I was part of, and in 3 hours we did about 2 rounds of combat. Now this was a big game where I think there was about 6 or 7 players, but the fact that the entire game got bogged down with its overcomplicated battle mechanic or fight mechanic system where you were literally playing seconds in hours of gameplay does make me think that there needs to be a sort of easier way to handle combat narratively. And as things have gone on, systems have tried to address this problem, but unfortunately systems still suffer from this greatly. I was referring to, I think, 3rd edition L5R on that one. I think 4 was slightly better and 5th is okay with custom dice, but there are some issues with custom dice which require you to have those custom dice or convert custom dice into regular D6s and whatever. Thac0 was one of those systems that would drag combat on for a long time. Now, a few video games had it in. The earlier Baldur's Gate games had it in, and Icewinddale had it in. So they were games which I played and I liked. Icewind Dale's one of my favourite settings. Unfortunately, the Rime of the Frost Maiden, which I reviewed or looked at very briefly, really needed to be a source book and not an adventure book. D&D seems to do these adventure books which could have been done much better as source books for the setting. Maybe I will do some sort of like ice setting at some point where I'll put my ideas for a sort of like frozen wasteland into an actual thing and put it up here and ask people to look at it, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I like ice settings. I like these wastelands where you are using these frost weapons and you are involved in these long scale campaigns in maybe trying to fight winter or bring spring back or something along those lines. You see, going back to the original point of the thing, Thac0 and frost weapons were big things when I was starting to, make up settings or create games for myself and looking at, creating these worlds and stuff. So Icewind Dale does hold some very fond memories, and the video game which contained Thac0. Saying all this though, Thac0 is one of those things that I see come up time and time again where people will absolutely hate it or people will absolutely love it. OSR, in my opinion, could incorporate a Thac0 system, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to at all. I know some do, some don't. And that's perfectly fine. If it was there, I might use it. If it was not there, I might not use it. But saying that, there is a lot of gatekeeping. There tends to be these people within OSR groups or OSE groups that want to keep things very traditional and not streamline gaming for easier gameplay. Maybe they like the idea of maths and stuff like that, and that's perfectly fine for them. But I think that sometimes Thac0 was one of those systems that did bog down the game too much. And I think that's why it died really. It was an in-house system that they brought into the gaming sphere and originally was maybe used to calculate charts or organise larger games, but when it comes to the tabletop it bogs things down. And there's a lot of games that do this really badly. Earlier editions of Vampire the Masquerade, as I've said, L5R did this, and it was pretty bad. So I think combat mechanics are going to be one of those systems that are going to have you're going to have favourites, or custom dice, or Thac0, or the current D&D 20 where you have like 20s always win, but it doesn't really. It just depends on your DM, and I think some ways Criticalrole has put this thing into people's minds that 20 always succeeds, no matter how impossible it is. No, you are not going to kill Tiamat, or you're not going to fight like Baal or one of the demon lords from hell, or Lilith, or whatever, or Loth, or any of those creatures, and when maybe you will be able to hit her, yeah, you can hit the god, but you are not going to do much damage against some sort of like powerful or knowing deity or a Tarask. You know, it's not going to be anything really meaningful to the creature, and I think that's a problem that needs to be addressed. Maybe Critical Role can do something with that, or maybe some people will need to come out and say, look, yeah, you hit with 20, but you don't always succeed with a 20, you know, that kind of thing. But there we go. Thac0 is, in my opinion, like Marmite, which I can't stand. You love or you hate it. I think it's okay. You know, it's the system I grew up with, as I've said. But a lot of people will defend it and use it to say, oh, you're too stupid to play, which is wrong in my opinion. Anyone should be able to play in D&D, even if you have to like cut half the rules, you know, just to make the experience about the game and not about the numbers, in my opinion. But if you like playing with numbers, that's perfectly fine. You know, I'm sure there are more maths heavy games. I think GURPS is very maths heavy, in my opinion, and Call of Cthulhu tends to be very percentage heavy, so they all have their swings and roundabouts with their systems, and which is finding the one that's right for you. But ultimately Thac0 was something that perhaps deserved to go away. Maybe it didn't, maybe it did. In my opinion, yeah, I guess it's easier now, but again, combat does drag, and I think no matter what system you have, it is going to drag unless someone finds an easier way of making narrative gameplay more accessible and more flowing. And there we go. I just wanted to talk about that because there is, you know, in whatever group or in, you know, whatever community I'm in, seems to have these people that melt down, or there's always someone coming out as a scumbag, and I've noticed that people will either say, oh, I'm not touching OSR with a barge pole because of certain people involved, or think it's the best thing since sliced bread. In my opinion, OSR has its place, and it is nice to find a system that's cut down, but OSR is still fairly maths heavy because it takes a lot from that D&D system, which was extremely maths heavy. And in my opinion, while it's interesting and fun to look at, I don't know if it's worth just saying, yeah, maybe we don't need, you know, like A-level maths or high school level maths or college level maths to just play with elves or dwarves fighting each other in dungeons. But that's just one goblin's thoughts anyway. Anyway, I've been Trix, and as you can see, this is still the new video format. I'm not sure on how people like it yet, but you know, maybe I will keep it up until I can figure out some other way of making things more engaging. But, you know, there we go. So, I hope that was at least illuminating for you what Thac0 was and why some people like it and why some people don't. I'm fairly indifferent to it now. I do sometimes miss it because my mind will always click back to that originally system that I initially learned before someone turned it into Fatal, which was horrible. Anyway, I've been Trix, and you've been all of you. Do take care of yourselves, and happy gaming. Bye bye.